It's not like it's always easy to live with your design. Like, it definitely wasn't easy to like quit my job and move country and, you know, make all those big decisions that were quite sort of pivotal at the time. But I didn't really know any of that was going to happen at the time. So it was really just like trust and following my design even before I realized what it was.
Hello and welcome to Nourish. My name is Kasha and I'm a holistic counselor and first-year doctoral student studying acupuncture and traditional Chinese medicine. My mission with this podcast is to share the stories of inspiring humans who have discovered that elusive state of balance between the Western concept of success with more Eastern philosophies of inner knowing and spirituality. Think yin and yang and flow. Now, these two do not need to be separate, but I know firsthand how difficult it can be to reconcile them. As a Silicon Valley burnout SKP myself, teaser, I left the tech world after 10 years of a thriving career in product management. I want to share the stories that I wish I had heard when I was struggling to find that balance and flow myself. On this podcast, we'll cover topics on spirituality, authentic career and relationships, slow living, mindfulness, alternative healing, concepts from psychology, and stories of transformation via traditional Chinese medicine and acupuncture. We'll also provide you with the tools to truly integrate both sides of your yin and yang. My hope is that these interviews can inspire you to rethink your own approach to mental, physical, and spiritual well-being. And if you are struggling, find your way back to authentic alignment. So, sit back, relax, and ground yourself back home, my love. Now let's get started. Hello, and welcome back to Nourish. I'm your host, Kasha, and I am so excited to bring you this week's episode of Nourish. So today's conversation is kind of different from the prior episodes that I've shared with you all. On the last few episodes, we definitely go deep into the stories that our guests have to share with us around how they were able to reach that elusive state of yin and yang in flow. So yang being that ambitious, hustling energy with yin energy, which is a little bit more of that inner knowing, that sense of peace, and one could even say spirituality. And the balance of these very opposing energies, or so it seems, is really what is at the foundation of Chinese medicine, Taoist theory, and honestly, when in balance, that is the state of optimum health and flow. So we've definitely been diving into the stories of people who have been able to achieve this and really into examples of how they did this in their lives. But I wanted to switch it up a little bit and start to also share some tangible tips on what to do with all the knowledge we're taking in. So you might be experiencing on the other end, whoa, okay, I'm tuning into this podcast. I'm recognizing that some things are out of alignment, and I would really love to get some tips here as to what I'm supposed to do with that. So great news. I hear you telepathically, since I obviously am not talking to you right now, but I hear you. And also that is something that I so deeply want and wanted when I was going through my own kind of self-discovery process over the past few years. So one of the tools that I found profoundly helpful for me was actually human design. So for those of you who are not familiar with human design is a system. So you can think of it as a cross between astrology and Myers-Briggs and so much more in between, which we absolutely get into on today's episode. And I got to speak with Lee-vin, who is a human design guide, a projector, which is actually an energy type. So if you're not familiar with that, we're going to be getting into it. And she's the host of Align and Create, a podcast dedicated to translating the concepts of human design into digestible information to help enable all humans like us align with their authentic selves and discover their true potential. So Lee-vin discovered human design after reaching her own breaking point, after 10 years of a very successful career in textile design. Despite climbing the ladder, sounds very familiar, globe-trotting around the world, sounds very familiar, Lee-vin knew that something was off. Her health was suffering, she felt like she was kind of swimming upstream, and she felt intuitively that there's got to be a different way to manage her life, manage her career, a different way of working and living. And she started to actually tune into following her design before she even discovered what human design was. And since then, she's seen a complete shift in her life from how she lives, where she lives, her partner, finding her partner in the first place, shifting her career entirely, and just really living in alignment and flow. And human design really provided her with the roadmap to be able to discover that. So on today's episode, we kind of treat this like a high-level reading in a way. So we definitely provide an introduction into human design. We give an overview of the different energy types. I'm going to be sharing a little bit about my own, which is a projector. So if you are a projector, you're going to find this pretty juicy because we definitely take advantage of our time together. I take advantage of it to ask a couple of questions. And we also talk about ways that human design can apply to career, relationships, transitions. And we also talk about some signs that you're living out of alignment and honestly what to do about it. Because as I mentioned, I'm really hoping that this episode is a little bit more tangible in terms of the tips. So that way, as we kind of hear all these inspiring stories, we also feel compelled to take some action in our lives. So, although I don't usually encourage any sort of prep before listening to my podcast, I would actually recommend that if you feel so inclined to have this episode go a little bit deeper, head over to the show notes and make sure to grab your own free chart of what your human design profile is before even starting to listen to this episode. I think that will actually offer such a deeper perspective and insight into what it is that we're discussing. Of course, that is just a suggestion. If you just want to learn and get a quick overview, please just tune in without any prep work. And without further ado, let's jump right in. I'm excited to welcome Lee-vin to the Nourish podcast.
I want to first kick it off with a couple of keywords. And I always ask every single guest that I bring onto the podcast, what are 3 words, non-work related, that you would use to describe yourself?
Okay, I would say creative, I would say intuitive, and I was thinking about the last word, and I was either going to go with fun, because I do really like to have fun and be playful, and I think that's so important. And then the other word was reflective, which I'm also very reflective, but I don't know, maybe that's too serious a word. But I think having fun. Obviously, I'm very creative, and my background is a designer, and then I kind of obviously moved more into human design. But yeah, I think those 3 words probably describe me quite well.
Well, I love the fun bit. You could be fun and reflective. You could be both.
Yeah.
I think that's totally reasonable. We can make it 4. Yeah, and that intuitive side is definitely something that I picked up on. So for those of you who don't follow Lee-vin on Instagram, the second that you will land on her page after, of course, listening to this podcast, I think that's one of the major things that I picked up on immediately. So I feel like all those resonate, but I also feel like I'm getting to know you on a deeper level. Let's dive into actually what is human design. And I'd love to start at the basics because I'm certain that there are people out there that are going to be listening to this episode who have never heard of it. Can you please share with us what is it and give us a little bit of context into how it works?
Yeah, definitely. So, human design is a system that is for self awareness and self understanding. And it's based on your exact time, place, and date of birth. It's a quantum system, so it brings together lots of different modalities. So, astrology, the I Ching, the Kabbalah, the chakra system, and biochemistry and quantum physics. So, it really sort of brings all of these systems together into this sort of quantum system, and it gives you what's called a body graph, which is basically your energetic user manual for how you can move through life in the way that will create the most flow and ease for you. So it's sort of, yeah, it's a very interesting system, but basically the more you get into your human design, the more tailored and specific it is for you. But I think initially, the best place to begin with is to learn about your energy type. So there's 5 energy types, and maybe it'll be helpful for me to go into a bit of detail about what each one is. I can leave maybe a link in the show notes or something where the listeners can look up their design and maybe find out a little bit more. I have a PDF where it explains a bit about each energy type. But basically, the first type is manifestors. So manifestors are designed to initiate. They're really amazing at sort of creating these worlds. They're this kind of trailblazer energy. And they really work well in cycles. So they get these surges of energy where they have loads of energy to do lots of things. And then that energy kind of crashes and they need to rest. So having that sort of built into whatever your career is can be really helpful. Manifestors tend to really like to work for themselves. They're very sort of independent energy. And yeah, they're really great at starting things, but not always the best suited to finishing things. So if you're a manifestor, it can be helpful to, you know, have someone else to help you, to sort of support you to sustain whatever it is that you're creating. But it's a very creative, initiative sort of energy. And I think someone that is kind of interesting to look at that for that is, well, I always think is interesting because being a manifestor can be so much about creating a world. And the writer J.R.R. Tolkien that wrote The Lord of the Rings, he's a manifestor. I think he's interesting because he created this whole world himself. And then obviously other people went on to sort of, you know, create films and all of that about it. But he was sort of the initial sort of catalyst that created that world. The next type is generators, and generators are really the builders. They're here to have sustainable energy to sort of see things through to completion. So as a generator, it's all about developing mastery and really using your gut to be the sort of GPS to let you know where you're supposed to go. So generators are really designed to be lit up and really love what they're doing. And when they're doing what they love, they give out energy towards everyone else. So they differ from the manifestors in that manifestors are designed to initiate and generators are really designed to respond. So responding to the universe, to opportunities that are sort of brought into their environment. And generators sort of magnetize opportunities towards them through doing what they love. And then the next type is manifesting generators, and they're a hybrid of both types. So they're a kind of an amalgamation of the manifestors and generator type, but they do more so operate as a generator in that they're designed to respond also to opportunities, but they tend to be more multi-passionate and have a lot of different things on the go. So for manifesting generators, they're also very, very fast at doing things. Sometimes they can skip steps and need to circle back and are designed to sort of master lots of different things, whereas generators tend to be very focused on one area within their life. So I think, let's say a good example of a generator would be Oprah. So she's really mastered the sort of communication field. Obviously, she does that in lots of different ways, but it tends to all be around communication, connection, and like sharing stories. And then an example of a manifesting generator would be someone like Rihanna, for example, who, you know, she's obviously a singer, but she has her like Fenty Beauty and she has her lingerie, and she kind of is this multi-passionate creative who has sort of lots of different things going on. And the next type then is projectors. So projectors are really here to guide the energy of others. So They're excellent leaders. They're excellent guides. Obviously, as I'm explaining this, any energy type can do any role. So I don't want it to sound limiting, because I think sometimes when people explain human design, it can be like, oh, only like manifestors and generators can be creative, or, no, all types can be whatever they want to be. It's more just around the kind of energy that you're bringing to that role. And it's also not even necessarily within the role as in career. It's more just like the energy that you're bringing to your life. So you might be using your projectorness energy in your family or within your friendships. So the projectors tend to be like guiding, having a very unique perspective on life, and really good at seeing how other people, seeing opportunities for other people, seeing how other people can use their energy in a way that's really going to work for them. So they make really good coaches, really good therapists. And yeah, so that's sort of the projector energy. So for projectors, it's a big emphasis on input, on learning, on honing your crafts and skills, and really sharing. So a big thing for projectors is making sure that you're visible and making sure that people can see you so that they can recognize you for your ability, and so that you can really shine. So for projectors, having that balance of time where you really harness your skills, and where it's kind of more inward, you're just very much focusing on yourself, focusing on what you want to learn, what you want to cultivate, and then having that other smaller portion of time, maybe 3 to 4 hours a day, where you're in that more generating mode of like doing activities that are more tiring. So it's kind of a balanced sort of energy. But I don't like the narrative like, if projectors can't do anything, they definitely can. And then the last type is reflectors. And reflectors have this sort of sampling energy. So they're the rarest of all energy types, they're only 1%. And they're really designed to take in the energy from the environments that they're in. They're also very influenced sort of by the moon. So they're going to change a lot in terms of how they feel throughout the month. And they have a natural, very fluid energy, and they're really great at sensing the potential of other people. So they make really great advisors. They're really designed to be at the heart of their community, to really share and mirror back how that community is doing. And a great example of a reflector, well, there aren't that many famous examples because it's such a rare energy type, but I'm not sure if you know the Balanced Blonde, Jordan Younger.
Yes.
She's a reflector.
Oh my gosh. Okay. So this is so much to digest. And I think you gave us examples of everything for reflector, manifesting generator, manifester. And what is an example of a projector?
Yeah, sorry, I don't know if I gave you that example. Barack Obama is a projector.
I'm floored. I'm shooketh right now. Oh my gosh. Okay. So I guess I'm trying to understand, first of all, like when thinking about all of these different designs, what you kind of described what is different about each of them. And you talked a lot about kind of the energy of how they show up. Like if you find out that you are a specific design, like for example, I am a projector, I'm curious, like, what does that mean for my energy? Is it the energy that I'm putting out? Is it the energy that how I react to the energy I'm receiving? Is it the way that I operate day to day? Like, how can I think about what identifying as, say, a projector or identifying as a reflector or a generator, like, what does that mean for me? Like, what do I have to think about as I identify as any of these energy types?
Definitely, yeah. So basically, when you learn about your energy type, it's sort of your energetic body. So it's your aura that you're giving out. So before you even speak, before you say anything, this is the energy people are sort of feeling from you. So for a projector, for instance, so for you, each energy type has a different aura. So for the projector energy type, it's really a focused and absorbing one. So that really gives you the ability to see very deeply into somebody else and understand them at quite a deep level. So they're going to feel that from you. So maybe, you're at a party or you're somewhere, and all of a sudden people are like, whoa, she's like really getting me and she's really seeing me. And, which is an amazing ability. But sometimes that can be a lot for people, to be really seen and really like focused on. So that's why that waiting for the invitation strategy really exists for projectors. And we can kind of get into each strategy. I didn't mention in the overview, but the projector strategy is waiting for an invitation. And that piece really exists because, when you have that invitation from someone, so whether it's an energetic one or like a realist, a physical like invitation from someone, it just gives you permission to really share information about that person, to have that. I guess they give you an opening in order to sort of come in and see them on a sort of a deeper level.
I love that explanation, because for me personally, it's always been so difficult to kind of understand what it means to be a particular design, right? Like, what does that mean to me, as a very logical person, I'm like, okay, if I'm a projector, I do X, Y, and Z. This is how I behave. This is how I should feel. And I kind of evaluate, okay, that's the box. Do I fit into it? And I think describing it as like an energetic aura really resonates. And I just want to kind of throw in a personal story that immediately came to mind as you were describing that. I remember in college, I would always go to these, not always, I wasn't like a frequent frat partier, but I would go to frat parties and I would talk to, I always found it very difficult to have like small talk. Like I just really wanted to like understand the person inside out. And I felt like that was really unnerving. You know, I definitely did not have the invitation in this environment where, people are just all trying to have, you know, I don't know, like just have fun and be laid back and definitely not go deep. And so that was just an example that immediately came to mind for me. But I do actually want to kind of tie back to that, because I think that it's strategy that you just mentioned for each of the energy types is so important. So the human design piece, your design is how you show up energetically. And can you tell us a little bit about what that means for the strategy? And every design has a different strategy. And what is that? And what is it for each design?
Yeah, definitely. I kind of touched on some of the strategies within the overview, but let's just go through it again so it's like super clear. So the manifestor strategy is to initiate. So they're designed to initiate. Well, their actual strategy is called to inform. So basically, when manifestors are initiating, they kind of do really well. They get these urges to initiate, to start something. And in order for there not to be like resistance with that, they're designed to inform other people. So if you imagine, like, let's say a manifestor at work and they're like, oh my God, I have this amazing idea. I want to do this, this, and this. But they don't tell anybody, then there's going to be like a lot of resistance if they just kind of go off and do their own thing. Whereas if they share like, oh, just to let you know, I'm going to do this project, or just to let you know, I'm working on this, there's like way less resistance. And even within manifestors, and even within a relationship, for instance, like just informing your partner as a manifestor, like, oh, I'm going out for a walk, or I'm doing this, because the manifesting energy can be quite independent, and it is a big aura. Like the manifestors have the sort of biggest aura of all the energy types. So your partner will really feel your energy. So just including them, letting them know what you're up to, can just make life run a lot more smoothly. And sometimes these strategies are not intuitive. Like it's not necessarily something you would think to do. So it can be just helpful. Try it out, you know, see if that works for you. Then the generator and the manifesting generator strategy is the same. So it's to respond. So they're not designed to initiate, but they are designed to respond to the universe. So that can be responding to something they see on Instagram, you know, whether it's an opportunity someone brings towards them, you know, really tuning into their sacral. So generators and manifesting generators have their sacral defined, which means that they have that like gut response. So they'll have a very strong like gut, like yes or no. And obviously the authority, which we can kind of get onto after this, which is your decision-making strategy, is sort of a separate thing. But within all of that, generators and manifesting generators will have that strong gut response, and that will sort of guide them as to whether something is right for them or not. But they're designed to respond to the universe, to opportunities. And then projectors, their strategy is to wait for the invitation. So as I was saying earlier, this is really can be energetic. It can be, you know, a physical invitation from someone else. Like I tend to look at waiting for the invitation more around big sort of aspects to your life. So maybe, you know, if you're moving in with someone, or it can be helpful in relationships if someone invites you into the relationship. So whether, you know, the other person asks you on a date or asks you sort of out, it doesn't mean like if that you don't get asked out that your relationship is doomed or anything like that. I think just energetically it can flow better. But also as a projector, you know, you can invite people as well. So it's not just around waiting around all the time. You know, you can invite other people, you can invite other people to do things. And also the waiting for the invitation piece, you really get invitations through recognizing yourself and through spending that time honing your craft, honing your skills, like depending on, what invitation you want to receive, taking that time to work on yourself, and then sharing and being visible. So the sort of, I always think the projector strategy is a bit more complicated to explain, because I think just waiting for the invitation sounds so passive, and it really isn't. So that's my thoughts on that. And the reflector strategy is to wait a lunar cycle. So this can sound really extreme, and it's definitely not for like, day-to-day decisions, but for those bigger decisions like moving country or maybe changing your career, giving yourself a 28-day cycle to sort of feel into all the different feelings that come up during that time. Because as a reflector, you are really sampling the energy of the people around you and the environment that you're in. So giving yourself time to come to that conclusion, and maybe for really big decisions, you might even need, a couple of cycles to really give yourself time to come to that conclusion. So I hope that explains the strategies.
I love the examples, by the way, because sometimes it's so hard to understand each of those designs. But by thinking of like somebody that really embodies them, you can clearly see how that differs. So I think that was really, really helpful. So I guess you start off, you have your design, you layer that up with, all right, you have your strategy, as we went over that. But tell us about the authority. And does every design have a different authority? Or, could you be like a projector with like a same authority as a reflector? So I don't know, tell us all about the different authorities and what that really means for you and your design.
Reflectors sort of have their own authority, so I'll get onto that in a minute, but a lot of the other types can share authority. So you could be, a projector and a generator and share the same authority. So that's really more specific to your own design. So there are 7 different ones, and the first one, which is what you actually have, is emotional authority. So emotional authority is how you make decisions, and it's basically waiting till you get into an emotionally neutral place. So oftentimes, if you have emotional authority, you might make a quick decision when you're kind of on an emotional high or on emotional low, and then be like, what was I thinking? Like a few days later, or rationally, make a decision. And then you're like, oh, why did I commit to that? That was, not actually in alignment. So waiting till you kind of get into that emotionally neutral place where it's not so like heated either way is really, really beneficial. And yeah, giving yourself time, and if, you really are designed to wait like a day or two before you make like decisions. I would say most decisions, but like obviously the bigger ones, you can't like wait 2 days to decide what to eat. But for those bigger decisions, definitely giving yourself time is going to be so key. The next one is sacral. And that is your gut response. So whatever your gut is sort of saying, so yes or no. And a good way to sort of a good way to get that gut response is to have somebody else ask you questions. So have someone ask you yes, no questions. If you have sacral authority, will help you tune into like whether it's a yes, whether it's a no. Sometimes if you're asked sort of too broadly a question, it can be hard to know like what your sort of response is. But having those yes, no questions can be really helpful. So the next type is splenic. So splenic authority is intuitive. So it's about giving yourself places where you can listen to your intuitive response, because it's going to be quiet. It's also very spontaneous and can be impulsive. So sometimes if you get an intuitive hit to like do something, take action on it. You're not designed to wait around. It's not like emotional authority. It's like the complete opposite. So it is that intuitive in the moment response. Like it can be quiet. So make sure that you have spaces, doing a meditation practice, getting into nature can be so beneficial for that authority. So the next one is ego authority. And ego authority is kind of interesting because it's really what you selfishly sort of want for yourself. So if you have the desire to do something, if it's going to benefit you, it's the right decision, which can sound kind of like, interesting. But I think often people that have this authority, maybe they're not, they're putting everyone else first. So actually, if you have this authority, you're really designed to come back to yourself, come back to what you really have the willpower to do, and to trust that if you have the desire, if you have the willpower to do it, it's the right move and it's going to be right for everybody else. Then the next type is self-projected. So self-projected authority is really about speaking things through. So through listening to yourself talk and having a sounding board. So having a trusted friend or someone that you can talk through your decision process with is going to be really, really helpful. And it's not really asking the other person for advice. It's really just tuning into your own voice, and through talking and through speaking, you will hear what the right decision for you is. And then the next type is environmental authority. So that's really going into different environments that feel good for you. So whether that's a specific coffee shop or a specific sort of route that you do will help you tune into what the right decision for you is. It's all about being in the right environment and having a specific sort of environment that you go to. So my dad is actually that authority, and that makes so much sense because he has this little specific routine of these like a couple of different shops that he goes to all the time. And I feel like every time he comes back, he always just has this clarity of like what he needs to do. It's like really bizarre, but anyway, it's an interesting authority. And then the last type is the reflector authority, and that's that 28-day lunar cycle of waiting to know what the right decision for them is.
Kind of taking in all of this information now that, we're familiar with the designs, kind of what are your strategies, and then a little bit about the authorities without even getting into the profiles yet. If you're new to human design and you're hearing this and kind of what category you fit into or design you fit into, what are some of the ways that you can explore kind of tuning into this more, right? Because it's a lot of information. So I don't know if the easiest approach is just to start with your design, even explore kind of your authority. Like, what do you recommend for somebody who's new, who's just like, you call this a grand experiment, which I love, but what if I'm new and I just want to experiment with this and see if this is true for me? Like, what are some tangible things that you would recommend doing if you're completely new to this?
So they say within human design, the most important thing is your strategy and authority. So if you just get those two pieces down, that is going to give you so much sort of licensing and so much flow within your life, and will really make big changes in your life and get you into a lot more alignment. So I think obviously human design, it's a never ending sort of rabbit hole you can go down. And, once you sort of get that piece down, then I think, it's time to like explore more and learn more. But I think even just learning about your strategy and authority and actually starting to implement it. So I think a great place to start would be, for your strategy and your authority, for example, like let's say for me as a projector, when I learned about my strategy being wait for the invitation, then I was like, okay, let me tune into that and let me see like where I sort of started to reflect back over my life. And I was looking at, okay, when I was invited, everything flowed. And I actually just naturally kind of did that mostly. Like I didn't really tend to initiate massively. And I always felt really guilty about that because I was like, oh, I'm not hustling enough. Like I should be hustling. And like every now and again, I would be like, get into this like hustle mode of like, even just like with jobs, for instance, like in the past, I used to always, I don't know, I would just kind of like wait for invitations with jobs. Like I'd be kind of invited into a specific role. And that always felt really natural to me. And anytime I was just like cold emailing or like, DMing people or whatever, nothing would happen. Whereas let's say with the manifester type, they're designed to initiate, they're designed to go out and to get things going. And it doesn't mean that if you're a projector, you can't like connect with people and all of that. Like you definitely can. And there's ways sort of around things. But I think waiting for that invitation is always going to feel better. Whereas the manifester, they're designed to initiate, they're designed to go out there and, like message people, get things going. They're designed to be the ones like asking people out, like even romantically. So there's a big sort of differentiation. And then with generators and manifesting generators, they're designed to respond. So tuning into their gut every day, I think, is a really great place to start for them, and sort of learning about what a response feels like. So what they're, they always say like they always say for generators and manifesting generators, it's kind of that like, or like, that gut response, like yes or no, whether they want to move towards something or away from something. And I even noticed that my sister's a manifesting generator, and she'll be like, just like yes or no. Like she's very like, her gut response is very quick. And even like she'll get like a pull towards something, or even just like an excitement towards something. And that's really like pulling you into, this is the right thing for you. And then obviously with the reflector, I think giving yourself time. I think learning about the lunar cycles and the planetary transits, if you're interested in that kind of thing, can be really beneficial because that plays in a lot to the reflector type. So I know that's like so much information. And yeah, the interesting thing about human design is like it's sort of almost like hard to break down because it's so specific. Like there's kind of 2 billion variables of like energy or types that you could be. So, you know, when you get into all the different pieces, so sometimes I think when people hear their energy type, it can be like, oh, like, I don't know, like that doesn't necessarily resonate fully. But then the more you get into your specifics, the more it's like, oh, actually, that is so me.
Lee-vin, I have a confession for you. I feel like I'm a failed projector. So just a little bit of context. When I first heard about my design as a projector, I had gotten a reading a year and a half, maybe even 2 years ago. And I remember crying. Like it just hit home for me to just hear myself described. But I say that I feel like I might be a failed projector because there's a part of the way that you kind of describe projectors that I resonate with, but I have not seen it play out in my life in this way. And very specifically, and I don't know if there are any other projectors out there that are listening to this that might be resonating with this, but and or any other design where something might be misaligned. So I'd really love to hear your thoughts on this. When it comes to the strategy of waiting for the invitation, I have historically, and I'll give you concrete examples because maybe I was waiting for the invitation, but I just didn't do it. But historically, I feel like I actually don't wait for the invitation. And I'll give you 2 concrete examples. So when it came to, for example, getting a job, like I would really go out there and hustle. Like I used to go door to door in New York City with my like rose scented resume, trying to, you know, get my foot in the door. Or I would, you know, I feel like I really put myself out there in all those situations. And I have, even though it resonates to wait for the invitation, and I can think of some concrete examples of where that has played out and it's been amazing. I don't know if it's a lack of trust or if it's just circumstantial, but I really struggle with that. And that I think is the hardest thing for me because, you know, there's a part of me that feels like I want to create something maybe that doesn't exist yet. And I don't really know how to wait for the invitation when I'm trying to bring it to fruition. Or maybe I'm not really supposed to be doing that as a projector because that's not aligned with my design and my authority. So I'd love to get your thoughts on that. And I can get more specific with the examples, but I don't know if my question makes sense, but basically, am I, you know, misreading the situation, or, you know, is it possible that my wait for the invitation is supposed to look different? Like, you know, what are your thoughts on kind of the scenario that I've been describing?
Yeah, I think it's interesting. Like, obviously, yeah, I'd love to know a bit more about how it played out. But I think there's kind of a few different things to touch on. Like, obviously, you don't have to wait for an invitation. No one has to do anything. The real thing about waiting for the invitation is it tends to feel better. It tends to flow better. But also within that, I think the invitation piece needs to be felt into. So I think that's going to look different for every single projector. So for you, for instance, maybe, you know, you obviously, all projectors need to make themselves visible. So whatever way you're making yourself visible, you know, maybe sometimes that works, sometimes that doesn't work. You also have this piece within your profile where you work very well with strangers. So there's sort of this like projection field sometimes. So your profile is a 3-5. And with that 5 line, it's, you know, people kind of like project onto you that you're sort of, it can be this sort of savior energy, where people are sort of very magnetized towards you, and you tend to work very well with people that you don't know. So they'll be naturally drawn to you. Whereas with my profile, I tend to work better through or networking more with my community, people that I know, kind of referrals, that kind of thing. That's slightly different for you. So that's just another sort of piece that's kind of slightly different for your specific design. You also, within your design, this is sort of a deeper layer to human design. So they might not have mentioned it in your previous reading, but you have a very strategic design where you're designed to be very focused, very strategic. So that might lend itself to operating in a certain way, whereas I've got the complete opposite. Mine is much more about flow. It's about sort of going with the flow. So that's sort of to do with the arrows, which is sort of a next level. I wouldn't recommend getting too into that if you're just new into human design, because it won't probably resonate until you're kind of living your design a bit more. But that could also be something where your strategy and your focus is sort of being pulled in that direction. Whereas for me, as a like sort of non-specific projector, that is sort of being pulled in the opposite direction. So my experience as a projector could be quite different to yours, but we both sort of have that invitation piece. And also, I think sometimes too, in terms of creating things, I definitely think, projectors can create things. And in many ways, I think the build it and they will come is kind of resonant for projectors, because I think it's like you have the vision, you have the perspective on whatever it is that you want to guide people through. So that could be a physical thing, it could be guiding energy, but it also can be showing people a certain way of seeing something. So I think if a projector wants to develop, like, I don't know, a product or something, it's around, okay, let me hone my skills, hone my craft, and make this product, and then become visible, show it to people, and then have them come bring in invitations to me and give me sort of opportunity to grow more within this. So I think it's like unpacking it. It's so nuanced, but I do think that is sort of relevant to mention.
Now that I think about it, after you kind of explained it further, I started to reflect on the scenarios that were coming to mind where, just for a little bit of context, in my prior life, I worked in tech as a product manager. So I was responsible for essentially building software from scratch. And that required a lot of partnerships a lot of the time, where I was actually known for being able to forge those relationships. So I think it's really interesting that you described that about my profile. And when I really reflect on the new software or the new ideas that would come to light, I actually feel like when I think about the deals that I secured or whatever, they actually came from a place of the partner, usually a very like elusive partner that we would really, almost like out of our league, that we would want to partner with. I was able to work with them in such a way where they actually would suggest the partnership as opposed to me suggesting it outright. And that was through building the relationship. So I think it's really interesting that you call that out. And I can think of several other examples where that has come to fruition.
Yeah, you're so welcome. I think it is so nuanced, and I think that can be hard sometimes when you're trying to explain, such a big system. It can be hard to sort of make it resonant always with each individual design, but there are a lot of nuances even sort of within that. So yeah, I'm so glad that resonated.
You know what? A theme of this podcast, Nourish, is really sharing the stories of beautiful humans who have kind of come into alignment between, what the Western society defines as, that notion of success, and a little bit more of that inner knowing, inner connection. So everything around human design deeply resonates. And we talked all about what it looks like to step into your design, but I would love to hear from you. What does it look like when designs are out of alignment? Because maybe for folks listening, they, might know what their design looks like, but they'd like to hear about signs of what it looks like when you're out of alignment. Do you think you could share a little bit about that for each design?
Yeah, definitely. So in human design, there's something called the not self. So that's basically like the out of alignment self. So for each energy type, there's a different not self theme. And there's also a signature, which is your in alignment expression. So I can explain sort of for each energy type what both of those are, so you can kind of know whether you're on track or not, basically. And also, this is something that, will be a continual thing. Not the not self theme will come up from time to time. It's not a big deal. It's just a sign that, coming back to your strategy and authority, you've gone off track slightly, and, no big deal. It's just a sign to come back to your design. So for manifestors, their signature is peace. So when a manifestor feels really peaceful, that's a sign that they are in alignment. They're living according to their design. and everything is sort of flowing as it should. And when manifestors are out of alignment, the feeling is anger. So if you feel really angry as a manifestor, it's a sign that you're out of alignment. Potentially you haven't been initiating, because it's really important for manifestors to initiate, to be creating, to dedicate time to be creating. So that could be some signs that you're sort of off track. Perhaps you haven't informed other people, and that's causing some resistance and anger. So there are just some things to play around with, but when you are in that peaceful feeling, you are on track. So the next is generators and manifesting generators have the same. So theirs is a feeling of satisfaction that shows that they are in alignment, things are going well, they're living their design correctly. And then a feeling of frustration is a sign that they've gone off track, maybe they're, not responding to the right things. Manifesting generators and generators can have a tendency to people please and to say yes because they have a lot of energy. And often people will be very drawn to that because they want the generator to help them. They want the manifesting generator to bring their energy in, and they can get kind of burnt out through helping other people constantly. So coming back to tuning in, are you saying yes when you actually want to say no? And really sort of delegating and detoxing that sort of out of your life, I think can be really beneficial and can help you sort of come back to that feeling of satisfaction. And then for projectors, so projectors are really designed to be successful. So it is whatever success means to you. It doesn't necessarily have to mean, society's view of success. It's what success specifically means to you. And when you're living your design, you're really designed to be successful. So that feeling of success is you are on track. A feeling of bitterness is a sign that you're off track. So sometimes, if you're comparing yourself to other people, I think that can be a big one for projectors. Maybe you're not allowing yourself to be visible and you're kind of getting really bitter about everyone else getting everything, but you're actually not putting yourself out there, or, making yourself visible, making yourself being able to get invitations. That can be a big one for projectors. So I think coming back to yourself, recognizing your ability, your unique perspective can be really helpful and can help to bring you into that feeling of success. And then for reflectors, their self-theme is a feeling of surprise. So their signature is all around feeling surprised. When they're surprised and delighted by life, they're in alignment. And then when they're off track is a feeling of disappointment. So the thing for reflectors is it's all about the environment. So as a reflector, if you're not in an environment where you feel good, it's the wrong environment. So, whether that's actually moving, whether that's, working in a different space, and whatever, people you're surrounding yourself by, really tuning into how the place makes you feel will help you to sort of get into that surprise and delighted sort of expression.
That resonates so deeply with me as a projector. I can think about so many occasions where I have felt that bitterness. And what's really interesting, and I actually, such an easy segue because I wanted to ask you about this as well, is that misalignment, the emotional response that it causes, for me personally, it would cause a lot of not just mental, emotional issues, but also physical issues. And it's just so interesting because I noticed in reading through your bio and some of, the discussions that we've had beforehand, you spoke about, your own personal experience and how, health and perhaps misalignment in life are connected. I'm wondering, do you see this with your clients as well? And I'd love to hear more about your story personally around, recognizing those signs of misalignment, not just on the emotional side and some of the cues that you just shared, but also how they can kind of perpetuate into the physical body.
Yeah, definitely. It's something I think specifically for projectors, I think there can be a tendency to overwork, and that can really lead to a lot of health problems. Also, so within human design, there's different centers, so which comes from the chakra system. So they sort of correspond to different parts of your body as well. So that can be kind of an interesting thing to look at if you're having some sort of challenges with certain parts of your body, what is going on in that energy center. But specifically, definitely for clients, I think the more they have gotten into alignment, it has really helped with their health overall. And with me, you know, I used to really struggle with a lot with my skin. I've had like psoriasis, like chronic psoriasis, like head to toe psoriasis, like at various points in my life. I also had acne a couple of years ago, which I'd never had before. And but I was very sort of going through quite a stressful period of time. And actually, the more I've sort of tuned into my energy, the more I have given myself time to rest and really see that as a really important part of my life, and not just be like working all the time. And my health has been like the best like it's ever been. So I think it can really help. There definitely is that, you know, mind body connection I really fully agree with. And I think often when we're, you know, if we're chronically stressed or we're not actually connecting with ourselves and our body, it's going to manifest a lot of the time in, you know, physical illness. At least that has been my experience. So I think getting into alignment is just so beneficial.
I am so glad that you brought this up because, you know, I didn't know this about you before going into this interview, but I just want to share that I don't have psoriasis, but I do have eczema, and I have myself experienced full body eczema, like head to toe eczema, which, you know, is obviously very different than psoriasis, but they do share some commonalities when I was living out of alignment with my truth. And I mean, like really repressing my own thoughts, my own feelings, like not communicating, not speaking my truth at all. And it's just, I actually just want to ask a personal question here, totally off script, but is there something there for projectors and like skin issues? Because I also, you know, eczema comes up when you have extremely dry skin. But I have, on the flip side, by the way, experienced also severe acne as well after, you know, kind of being out of alignment in like another very powerful, meaningful scenario in my life. And I noticed that I would go through these waves of, you know, kind of growing in my career, being super successful, and then boom, crashing physically. And it actually tended to manifest in my skin, first and foremost, either an acne outbreak or an eczema outbreak. And then, of course, like other physical symptoms would come up. But I'm just wondering if there's a theme there. Is it projector specific? Is it like,
Yeah. I don't know if it's projector specific. I think definitely projectors can be more vulnerable to the overworking thing because we don't have a defined sacral. So we're kind of taking in and amplifying that energy from everyone else. And sometimes that can cause overworking, burnout. So I think that could definitely be something. But I think the skin thing, I don't know, maybe it's a sensitivity thing of just like being very sensitive and maybe, you know, repressing emotions, not letting them out. I think that could be a potential for it. And I think the more you kind of are truthful with yourself, the more you are in tune with yourself and not just trying to be like everybody else. You know, I think that's what I really love about human design is that, you know, so often we can try and fit ourselves into a mold that just isn't us. And actually, our body can be like crying out underneath and be like, what are you doing? You're not listening to me. And actually, you know, human design can be a portal into listening to yourself, into listening to your body.
that is so beautifully said. And I'm just so excited to be able to share this information. I'm so, you know, honored to have you on and to have you kind of doing the work that you do, because I think helping people get back into balance and into alignment is just so, so, so important. You know this, and I think a lot of our audience knows this, but for any new listener, I am studying traditional Chinese medicine. And in this body of medicine, emotions are actually defined as one of the core influences in causing disease. And so the work of kind of coming back into alignment, may it be through any means, but human design being one of them, I just think is so, so beautiful. And I could literally keep asking you questions for the next 3 hours, but I think I'm just going to work with you one-on-one for that, because not everybody wants to know all about my personal design here. But I just want to say thank you so, so much for joining us. And I would love for you to share with the audience, where can they find you? And do you have any kind of, actually first, what are your kind of last takeaway or messages for those who are just tuning in, learning about human design, and also where can everybody find you?
So I think, if this is connecting with you, if you are resonating with this, if you want to, dive in a bit more, I definitely encourage you. I first heard about human design on a podcast and it's like completely changed my life. So, maybe this is going to be the moment for you where you're like, wow, I really understand myself at a deeper level. So I think if you're interested, I definitely advise you to learn about it and start to incorporate it into your life. Like I said at the beginning, it's an experiment. You don't have to, believe in any of this. You don't have to follow it to a T. I think take what resonates and leave the rest. And yeah, but I encourage you, if you are interested, definitely, dive down the rabbit hole. It's been so helpful in my life and in all my clients' lives. So, yes. So about me, I'm on Instagram at Align and Create. My website is alignandcreate.co. I offer human design readings, coaching all around human design. And if you would like to book a reading, then you can do so via my website. And I'm always happy to chat with people on Instagram and stuff. If you have a question about your design, I also have a podcast called Align and Create, Human Design Podcast. And you can get that on iTunes and all the different places where I share about human design and more. So yeah.
Thank you so much, Lee-vin. It has been such a pleasure. And I'm just also personally grateful because I'm excited to, further our relationship, getting to know you. It's been so exciting having you here. And I know that this episode is going to resonate with so many. And I cannot wait to get it in front of folks who have never heard of human design, as well as those who are a little bit more familiar, because there's so much to learn and you just really, really dove deep. So thank you so much. And thanks everyone for tuning in. Bye. Thank you so much for tuning into this episode of Nourish. If you heard anything on today's episode that really resonated with you, feel free to share it with your friends, your family members, or anyone who you think might be able to benefit from the conversation. Second, I am so eager to hear from all of you. If you have a moment and you'd like to, I'd so appreciate an honest review of Nourish. Of course, I love the 5-star reviews and it helps this podcast grow, but above anything else, I appreciate honesty. I promise I read each and every review myself and I work to integrate your feedback into future episodes. Finally, if you want to connect with any of the speakers, please check out the show notes for direct links to websites plus social media. And if you want to learn more about holistic counseling or traditional Chinese medicine and the work that I do, please head over to my website at www.mirawellness.co or my Instagram at Mira_wellness_co to connect. Thanks again for being a listener and see you next week.